Hey everyone, and welcome to the weekly Unreal Engine Twitch live stream. Today we've got senior gameplay programmer Laurent De Leon here.
Hello.
Did I say that all right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
good.
Been practicing. And lead animator Matthew Russell.
Hello.
They're here to talk to us all about animation and some of the things they're doing in Fortnite.
Right.
So first, before we get there, let's hit up the news. Shelley, head to the monitor. So East Coast Dev Tour is right around the corner. We are coming to Boston and Montreal. We're hoping to do all kinds of awesome stuff for you guys. And we've got our speaker list and the high-level topics finally nailed down. We're working on the schedule right now, so you'll see updates to that. But it looks like the tracks are going to be blueprints, gameplay, C++, editor, engine, materials, and VR and mobile. Speakers are going to be Alan Willard, Jay Hosfeld, Joe Groff, Max Prusner, Nicholas Smedberg, Zach Parrish, Wes Bunn, and myself. I don't know who's going to listen to me, but no, I'm just kidding. It ought to be a good time, so watch out for a schedule. We should have a full blog up soon with all the details. And our marketplace content update. Every week we try to get these out to you guys. So this week we've got Rifle Anim Set Pro by Kubold Games, Modern Weapons Pack by Blackfoot Studios, Materials and FX. Let's see, we got Fireworks by Tom Shannon, and Arid Desert set by Tris Babian. So check those out on Marketplace. Remember to keep those submissions coming. We're seeing some really great stuff come across, so just love to see what you guys create to push out to us to get back to other developers, so just keep it coming. And with that, I guess we can get over to the Game Jam. So if this is your first stream or you're unaware of it, last week we kicked off our very first Unreal Engine Game Jam. The theme was Bump in the Night. We had 21 submissions built over the weekend. So here's a quick reel of all the ones we've got.
Okay, that's creepy.
Yeah, some of these are pretty terrifying. Like that one. You walk around as the poltergeist.
We need a soundtrack on that.
Yeah, there's sound that they've got.
Gotcha.
Really good looking stuff here.
Yeah.
Built in, just Thursday night through Sunday night. So.
God, I can't make a sandwich in that movie.
I know.
All the time.
I know you
Making
can't.
games.
Last time you tried to make me one, it took like a week.
You shut up. You ate it.
I did. It was delicious.
Lots of Halloween themes.
Oh, that one's awesome. Look at that.
Yeah, pumpkin bombs.
And that's me, Halloween night.
That's me Halloween night. Bouncing around the street.
You picked up a pumpkin. Which is me, Halloween night.
This is me Halloween night. Cool. All right.
Very cool.
Set to loop. So let's pop that off. Awesome stuff. So thanks to all the participants. Thanks to everybody that submitted a game. Really, really cool stuff. These have been flying around the office. A lot of people have been playing them. We've had a hard drive that's been passed around, and people just plugging it in and booting them up. So with that, we're going to get the winners up here real quick, and let me see if I can get to the desktop. And the first of them is, if I can, oh no, I can barely see. Right, here we go. this is Bump by Kylal, and you're this little cube, and you can jump and make a flash to kind of see where you're going. So the idea is, well, not to die.
Wow. Have you
It's-
played video games
die.
before?
It's very difficult. This is one of the harder of them. You're trying to avoid the red cubes,
Okay.
and then they kind of see you and then attack you. So you can kind of see on the
There
corner
you
there
go.
and go hide behind this guy. There we go. Flash, see where I'm going. And then there are some purple ones that run on a track here. So really cool stuff. Pretty looking game.
Nice.
Very difficult. There I go, dead again. And back to the beginning. Reminds me, all right. And I might. So that is Bump.
Video games are hard.
Video games are difficult. Yeah. All right. And let's see.
I only say this because I'm not playing it.
That one's, is this engine up here?
Yes.
Yep.
What's this one?
Illumina.
Yep. Perfect. Binaries. All right. And the second one we've got here is Illumina by Dwunky Pengy. And this is one where you're trying to stay alive in a house, and your flashlight is slowly going out. So,
Okay.
and there are these creepy little red orbs that are trying to get you and hurt you. There's one right there.
Whoa.
Yeah, it reminds me of something out of my childhood, like when I watched a terrible movie and it's still haunting me. Can't put my finger on it yet. But yeah, I love the really just simplistic coloring, shadows. And you just see how long you can stay alive. And there you go. Oh my god. There you go. Oh gosh.
No.
I think I'm being. I think I'm dying.
No.
I think I'm dying.
No. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Last a minute, dude. Last a minute.
I'm trying, and I'm out.
So
Almost
close.
made it.
I actually got nervous looking at that one. That was kind of creepy.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And so congratulations to that one too. And the third one we've got here is, let's see, it should pop up full screen. This is King of the Pumpkins by Disco Bonsai. And this one is actually a two-player game on the same screen. So it's human versus ghost. And basically the human walks around and tries to activate pumpkins. I think it is with is it the E command. I've already forgotten which. Let me see if I can get back to the. There we go. Start game. It's the H command. So the H command activates pumpkins and unlocks doors and moves, while at the same time the ghost, who can go through walls, can lock those doors back behind and turn off pumpkins.
So it's basically like Troll, the game.
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice.
So it kind of reminded me of old Tony Hawk games where you're trying to, graffiti the lines. Like I have skated on this and I got the blue one, and the other guy has to come behind me and beat me out. And so over time you have more points, and it's, yeah. So a lot of fun there. Me and one of our support guys were playing this on the same screen earlier. It's really great. He won though, so that wasn't that great. All right, so those are our three winners. Congratulations to everybody. And one thing that that's not what I want to do at all. All right, let's see. So yeah, one thing that we wanted to do while we were chatting earlier today is everybody that has participated in the jam is actually going to get a free month this time. And the winners are actually going to get 3 full months, and we're going to send you guys a special October Game Jam t-shirt. So congratulations to all the people that participated and the winners. Thank you guys so much.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, awesome stuff. With that, I'll turn it over to the feature here,
Yeah.
our animators, and let
We'll
them
talk
go
about
nuts.
Fortnite
Yeah,
animation.
Sweet.
All right.
That's my role. I'll just keep passing that over.
So we'll play
Hard
a
questions coming. I'll just pass those over.
video in the background so we don't get disconnected. All right. So we're going to be talking about Fortnite animation today, and we'll be focusing on the main player animation mostly. And so, to sort of give a bit of context to that, we'll talk about the goals of what we want to achieve with the main player. And so, what we want to have is we want to support a lot of different characters. So we want short guys, tall guys, skinny, large, male, female, the whole range. And we want these guys to be able to use a lot of different weapons and props.
And it's not, just to add to that, it's not just they have to use a lot. It's any class can use any weapon.
Right. And a class, there's going to be a wide range of weapons between, katana, a sledgehammer, a shotgun, a rifle, rocket launcher. I mean, it's huge breadth of...
Toaster on a stick, like all of those. And you might think I'm joking, but I've seen the concepts, and it's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So, we have potentially a lot of animations. If you put props on one side and then characters on the other side, you have a big matrix, and it's a lot of combinations. So how do we get that done? So that's the goal. And now we have the reality check. We have 3 animators full-time on Fortnite. That's not many. And we talked about what we want to do for the player, but there's enemies, there's other things to animate. There's a lot of things. So 3 full-time guys, a lot of animations. So how do we make it work? So we cannot just brute force it. It's not going to work. So we have to get clever and see how we can reduce the number of animations that we have to do. So we have, regular constraints of CPU, memory, those kind of things. But for us, our bigger constraint is not many guys, not many hours, not a lot of manpower, and big ambitions. So we'll take a look at what we did. So basic idea that we started with is when we do a lot of animations, there's a lot of duplicated parts. So if you do a reload animation, you're going to reload your weapon when you're standing still, when you're running, when you're jumping. So do these have to be different animations? Can we pull out, the reloads, and then we just play it on top of, I'm idle, I'm running, I'm jumping. So we're sort of trying to pull apart what is redundant between these animations. So we don't, when we have this matrix, we don't create every possible combination. We sort of pull out, what is different, and then we try to combine it at runtime. So hopefully we have less data to produce, and it's easier to author and manage for 3 guys. So we'll take a quick look at what we did. This is the animation blueprint for our main guy. And so we split it in major parts. We sort of have 4 steps that we made. We started with what we call the weapon pose layer. And this is going to be basically the prop or the weapon that we're carrying. And then the second big part, step number 2, will be the locomotion. So this is where we're going to be walking, running, jumping, doing all different things. It looks small, but it's actually in a state machine on there. And you can see it's not very complex. We have the idle, we have a part for the jump, a part for the fall here. We land, and then this is all the movement in there. So walk, run, all these. So that was step number 2. And step number 3, we have another locomotion state machine here, and that's the additive. So we'll explain why we need that. And then the final part is the IK. So we do a bit of post-processing at the end before we just output it in the game. So our goal being trying to decouple as many things as we can and then sort of piece them together at runtime and share them. The best case scenario that we could have is we can describe a weapon by a unique pose. That would be ideal. So we try to reach that goal. So we pulled out the locomotion apart from weapon poses. And so we'll show an example here where we have our guy, and that's the pose that he has when he's carrying a sledgehammer.
So just real quick, for people that are putting together, motion sets, a lot of what we try to do is, because we're trying to propagate animation over a whole lot, over multiple assets, body types, and everything. So we try to constrain it to some primary poses. So like with melee, we have our melee broken up into wide grip, narrow grip, and then our ranged weapons, we have like like shotgun rifles. Occupy one because their grip is very similar. Pistols occupy another, and then we'll have some one-offs like grenade launchers, rocket launchers, stuff like that. And so when we're talking about those poses, that gross pose that we're able to use over a wide range of content is what we're referring to.
Right. So we'll show what this means. So the first part is the weapon pose that we just talked about. So when we're looking at this guy here, he's carrying the sledgehammer. So I'm going to go and disable all the other layers. So we have the other layers. They're all turned off. So what we see is really just the weapon pose for that sledgehammer. We can switch between different poses. So the pistol would look like this, shotgun would look like this, and so on. So going back to our melee, now we want to have this guy move. So we'll go into the second part. So I'm going to increase the speed a little bit here. So he should be moving, but he's not because we disabled that. So now we're going to enable the locomotion layer. So as soon as we enable that guy, he's going to be moving. So that's really just a straight blend between the upper body, the weapon pose that is completely static. It's one frame. And then we have the locomotion layer. And that locomotion layer can go from idle, and then we have a jog and a run. We have different speeds for that. And different directions, and we have the jump and all the locomotion. So very static. So that's the main problem that we have with the upper body, because it's only one pose. When the player decides to jump or turn or those kind of things, it's very rigid. So we add the layer number 3, which is the locomotion additive. So we add now all the sway and the motion in the upper body. So the reason that we pulled that out is because we found that that secondary motion that's additive is something that we can share between a lot of different weapons. So we can make different postures, different weapon poses very cheaply just by using one pose, and then we can reuse some secondary motion that we've done.
So like as far as the animation content, when we're creating it, like the one that you're seeing right now with the melee, all of that animation is actually done in Maya, and we do the entire animation set, the entire traversal set with like a 4-way run. And if we need to, like for something like a narrow grip, we could actually do a pose that would just push the hands closer together. And all of, we're treat it kind of like a delta, and all of the animation, all of the secondary animation carries through that. And then the only time that, as long as our hand positions are the only things and there can even be some body posture changes as well. And the only time that we ever really, at that point, need to worry about creating a whole new traversal set is if it's something where a pose adjustment isn't going to cut it. All of a sudden you want to go from a 2-hand melee to a 1-hand melee. You could do that in the pose, but you're still going to get the secondary animation as if it is being driven by both hands holding onto the weapon. So it cuts down on a huge amount of content that we have to create.
Right, and so typically for the secondary motion, we'll split it into one-handed and two-handed poses. For what you describe, when you hold a weapon 2 hands, both hands tend to do the exact same motion because they're carrying the same prop. When you're holding a pistol 1 hand, then they'll tend to do something very different. So we'll separate these. The great thing about this system is that it's completely organic. So we're not locked into these choices. You know, we can always, if we need a unique secondary motion, we just add it. You know, it's there for convenience. If we can reuse it, we do, and if we can't, we just make a new one and we just build it from there.
We shoot for reusing it first, and then if we can't, hey, all the new stuff.
Exactly. So I studied the game a little bit, and we can see. So it's a different character, but it's the same pose. You know, the same melee pose that we showed. So you know, the way he's holding the weapon is that one frame static. All the motion you're going to see, all the secondary motion, the leans, the sways, what happens when he jumps and lands, like that's all the secondary motion, the secondary layer that we showed. So that gets shared and carried to other weapon poses, so it's very flexible. Let's see, so going back into our big view, weapon pose is in here, and we'll dig into that in a little bit. And this is where we blend it with the locomotion. And I wanted to show that a little bit because I've had questions about it. We use it with a layered blend per bone filter. That's how we call it in the engine. And basically that creates a mask. So a simple way of looking at it is it's a mask to isolate the legs. So here we get the locomotion, it's the lower body, and here we'll get the upper body. So it's actually a bit more nuanced than that because we do a little bit of feathering along the spine, so it's not a hard cut. There's still a bit of motion along the spine. But a good way of looking at it is lower body and upper body. It's a very clear split. So that's how it works. And we also made it so the lower body locomotion is only active if you're not moving. So we control it here based on the idle state of the locomotion state machine. So what this means is when you're not moving, what comes from the upper body is actually full body. So let's take the example of a reload. If you reload a weapon, when I'm moving, the locomotion will play on the legs, and so the reload will only play on the upper body. If I'm standing still, then a reload will play as a full body animation, so you can have more nuanced motion on the entire body. Now we'll take a quick look at our weapon pose layer. So we said for the melee it's only a single pose, and this is the animation that we use here. You see it's an anim sequence, and it's not even animating, it's just really a one frame pose. What we have here is we're basically describe all the props and weapons that you can carry. So when we walk from here, first is the build mode. So that's when you edit the world in Fortnite. You can create and delete things, and that's the poses we have. Again, one frame poses. Then we go into melee, and same thing. It's two-handed and one melee versions. And then here we get into weapons, and some of the weapons are a bit more complex because they have aiming animations, so you can aim up and down. So we have this for the shotgun, the pistol, and the assault rifle. I'll show the pistol. That is an interesting weapon. By default, the pistol is not aimed. That's the relaxed pose, and that's he carries pointing at the ground. But as soon as you go into targeting, then he's going to aim that weapon up. And in that case, we define an aim offset. We only control the pitch right now. We may do more in the future. But you can control the aim up and down right here. So it's just 3 poses. We have down, middle, and up. And we just blend in between. So it's very simple stuff. That's basically how we describe our weapon poses. And we have 2 animations that we can play there. So the first one is firing animations, and we created what we call an aim space slot. So we have a little slot here, and we can play montages. For those who don't know, montages is a way to play animations from code. So we don't put our firing animations in this blend tree. We have them in the weapon, and the weapon will push these as you press fire.
Just so you know, you say montage better than anybody in the building.
So this is how we build it. This slot will play animations in mesh space. So it's not local space of all the bones. It's what we see here, that little coordinate system mesh space. The reason we do that is so up is always up. So if you can get the camera back on me, I'll show why we want to do this. So let's say we have a pistol and we want to do a fire animation. So we'll do a fire animation like this. We'll go up like this. But now, while we run, or if we have a different pose and we want to hold the pistol gangster style, if we still play the firing animation in local space, then the gun will go like this. It won't go up anymore. So we do our firing animations mesh space. So when we describe a recoil and a certain effect, no matter what you play, if you start running and you get very noisy in your motion, then you will always have the recoil in the right direction. But it's in mesh space. So what we do here is we basically take the animation when the guy aims up and down, and we counter rotate it. So we go back into mesh space. We can then play the firing animation that is additive, so on top of whatever aim you have, and then we re-rotate it back into the correct space. So that is number one, where we can play animations, and number two is here, and it's a simple slot. We just call it upper body slot, and that's where we play reload animations. So that will take over the weapon pose completely. So typically when we want to create a new weapon pose, we'll have to come up with either a one frame for melee. For rifles, we'll have to come up with 3 frames, the aiming, and then we'll come up with firing animations. For some weapons, we can reuse them because they're additive, but they can be unique. And then we'll have the reloads, and that typically is unique because the hands have to do a lot of things, so the grip matters.
And that's the biggest, just as an aside, that's one of the biggest reasons for us why we do a lot of this way, is so that when we're creating custom content for unique weapons, we're able to spend time focusing on the stuff that is cool, right? Which is like the reloads or any kind of like weapon-specific emotes or the content like that when you see it, it's unique to that weapon. That way we're not spending a whole lot of time just getting all of the base stuff to parity with everything else.
Right. Exactly. And so the aiming is one thing that we're thinking about pulling out. This is something we've done actually in the past on Gears of War, where the aiming was actually an additive animation in mesh space. And so when you have very similar poses, and we're talking, maybe a shotgun to a rifle, where, the overall silhouette is very similar. It's really just the hand grip that is very different. And additive typically will work well for that. So in the future, that might be even cheaper for us to do these kind of animations. Once we pull out the aim, a lot of these rifle animations may just need one pose, the grip pose. And if we can share the firing animation, then at this point it's one static grip and then reloads, and then that's it. So
Yay.
Extremely cheap. Yeah. Very nice. I'll talk briefly about the sprint. The sprint is something that we haven't really pushed all the way yet, but they're very easy to author, so we haven't really felt the need to go that much further. But we just have a big switch between all the different poses, and we have just a looping animation that plays. We found that it's manageable that way. It's easy for you guys to just author one looping animation and be done.
One of the design reasons why this works really well is also you're constrained on what you can do in game from the sprint. A lot of games, when you're in sprint, that's what you're doing. So there's no firing or anything like that. Anytime you do anything else, you come out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an exclusive state. So what we did pull out though is so we have just one animation. What we did add is we rotate the mesh to face where you're going. So when you sprint forward, but you can do a little bit of turning as you do that. So this is done procedurally. We just rotate the mesh, and then we just have a lean additive layer added on top to add a little bit of motion as you turn. Let's see if it comes out. I'll try to play it. The frame rate, it might not look great, but we'll try. As I turn the mouse, there's a lean. It's probably a little too subtle for this frame rate, but
you can crank it to like 45 degrees.
See. And this is the turning. So here I'm not turning the mouse, just the keyboard, and we get the real-time rotation. And with the mouse, we see the leaning a little bit better. So it's still relatively cheap. We could push it further, and a lot of these poses, the running is similar, and it's really just the grip that's different. But since it's as you said, isolated, it's just that one looping animation, pulling these out wouldn't save us that much. So we haven't, felt the need to do it yet. So we've already touched on locomotion blending. We've done that. Locomotion additive is really the same. It mirrors the state machine one-to-one, and we just have different additive versions for one-handed, two-handed. And then we have a slot to play full body animation, so that will override all the locomotion and weapon pose. We'll use this typically for attacks. Some of the melee attacks we use root motion and we do full body attacks. That point it takes over the tree completely. And then the last step is all the IK processing. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to talk first about retargeting. So here we showed mostly how we can handle a lot of different props and weapons on a character. But now we have multiple characters to handle. And so we use retargeting for that. We use Unreal's runtime retargeting. It's very simple, very trivial, but it's also very fast, and that's why we use it. There's not a whole lot of processing at runtime, so there are lots of constraints. It's not the most flexible to work with, but for what we need, it works great, and it's fast. Like, performance is really what we're after. So there are documentation on that, but I'm going to talk briefly about it.
And that is one of the things. If you understand what the constraints are of working with it, you can get a huge amount of use out of a really small amount of content.
Right. It's very flexible. It does require a few extra steps. You need some processing, but it is cheap and it is flexible. And for a game, it's great to use. So that's the setup for retargeting here. So at a high level, what we do is basically the animation will always propagate to the rotation of the joints. So you have a skeleton, rotation will always come from animation. And so what we can change when we retarget is the length of the bone, the translation part. So I will show a character quickly that will show that better. I will go into our... Let's see, I'm trying to find my tests. There we go. That's a good test, actually. And we'll find a better character. Female is a good one to start. That's the female version of our commando character. And so at first glance, she doesn't look that different from the other guy. But we can compare the skeletons, and that's where we see the big difference. So here we show her bones. That's her skeleton in game. I will hide her mesh so it's more obvious. So this is what her skeleton looks like. And we can show, if we select this, what the animation looks like non-retargeted. So that is the animation as it was animated on our previous guy, the original model. And we can see the difference now. Skeletons are very, very different. This is mostly a height difference here. If we look at our large body type, we'll see that it's even more different. This guy. Can see shoulders here are very different. The hips are very, very different. He's not that much taller, but it's a different set of problems. So the constraints of our system is when we look here at the bone rotations, these have to be the same because they come straight from the animation. So we do no retargeting whatsoever. It's a straight pass-through. What we change, though, is the translation vector here. And you'll see the setup that we have. Most of these are skeleton, and that means that we just pull the translation from the skeleton of the character. That's what you see for the hips, for example. They have just different translation vectors. That's what you see for the shoulders, different translation vectors. We have some that are set to animation, for example. That means that we use the translation from the animation. We do this for root motion. We don't want to retarget that. We want it as is. The pelvis is animation, but it's scaled, so we want to stretch it. So if we use just pure animation, then this guy would, would change. We could probably see it there. Yeah, he would just snap to that. So we want to make sure that we don't want that to happen. And that's basically the gist of it. It's very simple, but with a system that is simple, it has also a lot of limits. So as long as we don't deal with props, we're fine. Unfortunately, in Fortnite, we do a lot. And the pistol is a great example. So I'm going to disable IK. So that's our fourth layer, just to see what we're up against. So this guy has larger shoulders. And so while the original guy was holding the pistol correctly, because this one has larger shoulders, the hands don't connect anymore. I'll show the mesh.
And that's because all of the animation on the joints is being driven by FK.
Right, because we do absolutely no retargeting on the rotation whatsoever. We just take it as is. So if you pull the shoulders apart, the hands are going to follow that movement. So that's where some post-processing is needed and comes into play. So for this guy, we'll do some IK post-processing, and then we'll just connect the hands together. So the way that we do this is interesting, and I'm talking about it in a minute. That setup is very interesting. But first, I wanted to show very briefly our retargeting source. So we create profiles for our different skeletons. For those using the engine, it's going to be in a retargeting manager here. I'll try to increase that size. And we have little profiles here of our different skeletons. And what we can do with this is basically flag certain animations saying they've been made for a specific character. So retargeting is not something that has to happen all the time. If we want to get a unique pose or a unique animation for one of our characters, then we can. We can mix and match animations made for different characters.
Now, there is one thing that we did figure out with that is if you create an animation inside of Maya, like we'll just say the idle pose. The idle pose is kind of the great unifier across all of the classes, right? Or all of the body types. And you create it. We have one body type that we use to create is the source rig for all of our content, and it's retargeted onto all of the other ones. That retargeted pose does not exist in Maya now. And so one of the things that we do is when we create custom content based off of any one of the other body types, what we've done is we export the actual retargeted pose out of the engine, and we use that in our pose library. That way, if we need to, for like our constructor, our large body type, that way if we need to do any kind of custom animation specific to him, we have his retargeted pose from an engine as our starting point in Maya. So
exactly. So again, with the rest of our setup, it's something that's made to be flexible. So as much as we try to retarget everything because it's cheaper for us, it's not always realistic. There's always going to be edge cases. So for us, the ability to say, oh, we can drop a custom pose there, and it's going to fix all of our problems is very, very precious. So very convenient to have. So that's roughly what we do for retargeting. So now I'm going to dig more into what we do for IK bones. And IK bones is something that's useful for both retargeting, but also the sort of layering system that we do before. And so what this is basically we have a set of bones that's animated from the root and then follows the hands and the weapon throughout the entire animation. So you can see it as some sort of locators or just IK targets. They are not children of other bones. They're directly children of the roots. So they don't have to fight anything that happens before them, which is the problem that we have in traditional FK, where when you're trying to do something with the hands, you have to go through all the parents, go the roots, and so when you, I'll show that example. When you look at an aiming animation, for example, let's see, let's remove this one. I'll go back to this. Let's see if the pistol works well. I'll take our original guy, it will be more visible. Okay. So for aiming animations, we said that we had only 3 poses. So we have the center and then we have up and down. So you have 90 degrees gap between these animations. It's quite a bit. So if I want to do I set the aiming to 45 degrees, so we're doing exactly 50% blend between the straight and the up. And so if I disconnect my IK, it may be hard to notice with this one, but well, we can see. Okay, so the hands don't connect anymore. You see that bone here in the middle? That's where the hands should be. That's what the IK bones tell us where they should be. The hands, they don't connect with each other. There's the breathing additive that's playing, and then we're blending 50% between 2 aiming animations. And everything is done in FK, and what FK means is basically we're blending every bone's 50%. We start with the roots, we go to the pelvis, we go down the spine, and so on. And so by the time we reach the hands, we're not exactly where we want to be. So that's why we do IK, which is the opposite of FK. Is we start with the goal, we start with what matters, and then we reconstruct the rest. So we have these IK bones that tell us where the hands should be. So here it's just as simple as using IK on the hands, IKing the hands to these bones, and then they match exactly. Now, 2 things. Why did we use bones? We use bones because they can be animated. So when we do complex things like reloading a weapon and dealing with props, all of that animation carries. So I can reload a weapon, and I can place some additives, I can be blending between animations, I can even retarget it. All of that is going to carry across. If we just use fixed offset, let's say I carry a gun and I just want to IK as a fixed offset from the right hand, as soon as I want to animate, what do I do? It doesn't work anymore. So
what do you do?
What do you do? So using bone allows us to animate things and retarget them very easily.
And one of the really cool things, I'm going to say something that you were probably going to say way cooler and with a French accent. But one of the things that's really cool is you can also blend into and out of IK. And like you've been able to see with a couple of our body types, our constructor, our large body type, is huge. He's a big old refrigerator box of a boy. And the reload animations, like on the pistol, a pistol is a great example. He has the clip, drops it, reaches for his hip, and puts it in. Well, his hips are obviously a lot narrower than the constructor. And so if you left it at IK the entire time, he would drop the clip, reach into his lower intestine, grab a clip, and stick it in. And so what the blend out does is, since you're going from IK to like just true rotation, and we don't retarget that, you can blend out of it when he lets go, and then the FK rotation is blending, and the relationship to the hip is pretty much spot on. And then as you're going back, you do the blend back in. So once again, it is taking an animation that was created for a completely different body type and still making it look like custom authored content.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So if we can look at the animation here, we see the relationship. We made basically the left hand a child of the right hand and the weapon. So whenever the left hand is doing something there, it has to fight and compensate what the right hand is doing. And so that works well here because they're both dependent of the weapon. But as soon as we want to do something like reaching for an ammo clip on in your pocket or something like that, then the fighting the right hand becomes a big problem. So we do need to disable IK in that case. And so the reload here, we've basically added curves where we can control the IK behavior. So we called it left hand FK, which is the opposite of IK. And so when you start, the FK is off, and then we turn it back on. So looking at
here's
this
a quick lesson. FK, forward kinematics, starts from the parent and goes out down the chain. IK, inverse kinematics, it starts from the goal and works back up the chain.
Exactly. So we want IK because the hands are on a weapon, and then as we get close to reaching for the pouch, then the curve, we disable IK completely, and then as we go back to the gun, we re-enable IK.
Can you actually show that on the large guy, so they can see the?
Oh yeah. Let's go. So as we go and grab, I have turned off IK, so it's just playing the animation, But
you can look and see, like he's actually reaching appropriately for the hip, and you can look at him and tell his hips. He's kind of hippie.
He's a little larger than
He's
the
a little,
last.
you know. He's a big, beautiful constructor. I like
so
him.
we can control that in curves. So these bones are really just markers for us to follow, and we have it around the weapon because that's the main thing that we interact with. But if we're interacting with other things, then we could create other markers. If grabbing our knee, for example, was very important and something we do a lot, then we would create another bone that follows the knees to where the hand should be, and so we'd be able to retarget that with characters of different proportions and doing different things when we overlay different types of animations. So that's a system that we can extend to do more things. It's really IK targets, basically. So one interesting thing that we had with the female is that she was taller, much taller than our... is that... No, that's not her. Let's see, that's her. Okay, so she was taller than our guy, and we said that our IK bones are children of the root. So they're basically, we can view them as mesh space locators. That's what they are, essentially. So she's taller, and that's going to be a problem. So as if we don't do any IK, this is how it looks like. She's here, and we see the IK bones here, and we can see the IK bones are way below where she should be. So the arms are in FK pose now, and we see the IK bone chain. If I just enable IK and don't do any other processing, it's going to pull her arms down because she's taller, and that's where the other guy would be. And so what we need to do is we need to retarget this as well. We just do a simple retargeting. We look at where the FK position is and the offset from the IK, and we just move it to match. So essentially what this does, it will just raise it to where our arms would be naturally. So we sort of do a little AFK blend that's more natural. This works well when you have guys that have, like longer arms or significantly taller, and someone who would have longer arms or shorter arms, the weapon would be off the chest at different positions, and so that allows us to retarget this and fix it. I think we're getting close to everything that.
Well, one of the things that's really cool about this is how you're driving a lot of the stuff off of the right hand, like with the pistol, and the way it's authored for one character. If we were to just do a straight up on our large guy, he's very barrel chested, and his arms immediately start clipping. Yeah. And so one of the things that Laurent has put in there is IK weighting, and so you can favor right side or left side. Okay. Right. And so with him, we just take it and push it over. Yeah. And once again, it's one of those things, super, super simple in theory, and makes content look custom to different body types. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, when we retarget the IK, we weighted it equally to the left and right hand. But if you had a pose where that's not the case, I hold my pistol just one-handed, then it should be weighted only to the right hand. Mm-hmm. So we can control that through curves. So I guess as you manipulate a weapon, you could animate a curve to favor the IK on one hand or the other. So this is really also just work in progress. We have a lot more plans to improve this. We want to add some curves to be able to control the pull vectors on the IK, because right now we only control the position. So when you have guys that have very different proportions, just moving the hands is not enough. You need to move the elbows with it. So
one of the other things too, like what we were talking about with constraints, the retargeting, the way it's set up, covers a ridiculous amount of all of the things that we need. But one of the things that we have run into is because there's so much interaction between melee weapons and props and ranged weapons and just different kinds of stuff. One of the constraints that we've kind of self-imposed is that the distance between the wrist and the middle of the palm across all of our guys has to be the same. The reason for that is that our parent, the root for our weapons, the distance between that and to where the handle is that distance. This is it's something that was a legacy off of Gears that branched into and worked perfectly for Fortnite originally, and then as we started modifying body types, that was just a constraint that we had to do, so that when hands on different characters were attaching to weapons, they were attaching to the right place. If you've got a different space in here, and then you attach a weapon, if the middle of their palm is here, when they close their hand, all of a sudden, you'll either have the handle too far back or the handle too far forward, depending on male or female. And for a lot of what we're doing, the hands spend most of their time on weapons. So looking at any of our smaller body types and seeing that they might have monstrously huge hands, which they don't, but larger hands than you might normally just custom create for them, hasn't been an issue, because most of the time you spent, they're in some they're busy doing stuff, so you don't notice it.
So we'll take a few questions now.
Sweet, let's take all the questions.
We're done with everything we wanted to cover.
Yeah.
I'll pick some at random. So this one, how different are AI and in blueprints from this average player blueprint? The answer is very different. Well, all players are basically the same in Fortnite, meaning they can do all the same things and share all the same things. Our enemies are very different, and they're usually more focused. So they have more unique animation blueprints and simpler. They don't need to do all the same things and interact with all the same weapons. So they're usually unique and simpler. How do you handle the additive cringe state machine for heat reactions? So
Yeah, how do we do
the
that?
answer
on
for
top of
that
montages.
is it's not pretty, and that's why I'm not going to show it. No,
Nothing to see here.
the reality is we had a limitation of only playing one montage at a time, and so we came up with a state machine to try to fake it, but it doesn't work that great. So 4.6 will have multiple montage and will handle cringes that way. So we'll be able to just play montage on demand from code when you get hit and remove that state machine. The way that it works is just very simple. We just had, when you get hit, you had a counter and you would go and play an animation and go back to idle. And so it's kind of just a one loop state machine. So not really the way that I wanted to do it, but it worked. Do we do ragdoll bone simulation blending with the animations for heat reactions or similar behavior at all? We don't. It's something that we've tried on Gears of War a while back. It's not something that worked well. We tried it, and then we went back to using animations, especially for heat reactions. Animation just looks way better. You can control exactly what you want. You control the performance and how it looks. So we use physics in two areas in Gears. The main one was for the death, obviously, so you could conform to the ground, but we also made it so when you get shot, you could hit a wall. So we played a dramatic death animation, and if it happened to be cover or a wall, we had springs between the physics and the animation, and if they overextend too much, we would break them and switch to ragdoll. So you got these very natural, like over-dramatic things, and as soon as you hit something, then you would collapse and fall. We used them for flamethrower death when you would flail and die, and that was pretty fun. We had tests for recovery animation, like Get Up, and we used ragdoll for that. But Fortnite, we don't use any physics currently, and I don't know if we have any plan to do so. We'll see. Let's see. Do you have additional joint in the character skeleton for the weapons, or do you constrain the weapon to an existing joint like the wrist? So we do have a weapon bone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we have
socket.
weapon bone, yeah.
Yeah, so the way that it works is basically the wrist is what we call the hand, and then we have a weapon bone that comes off of that. The IK bones follow the wrist, so that's what we fix when we do retargeting. And then the weapon bone, we just animate it, so it's not even retargeted, it's just playing animation straight from it, because we basically say from the wrist down, everybody will have the same, so we don't do any retargeting on the fingers, or that would be a bit too complex for what we're trying to do.
And there's a couple of ways, like I'm actually going to go off. I'm going to go rogue for a second. A couple of things. There's a couple of ways to do it. Like you can do weapon animation either with syncing the animation where your weapon is a separate skeleton, and then you constrain it, and then you're just syncing the animation of the player of the main player with the animation of the weapon. Or you can also, if you're not doing a ton of retargeting, you can also build in those joints, as like kind of like they're alluding at. You can build in those additional joints into the skeleton for the player, and so when you export that out, all of that animation comes through. And I've worked both ways. Both ways work. It just depends on what your flavor and what your constraints are.
I'm reading through the questions. There's a lot of really good questions there. So for firing animations, do you play animations on the player to move the hands and on the weapon mesh and in Blueprint independently? Yes, so firing animations are on the player. Currently our weapons are not animated, but they will be.
Yes.
And so these will be independent montages, one for the player and then one for the weapon, and they will play in sync.
And the cool thing about that is it goes for us, like, we'll be able to use a firing animation, the basic firing animation across a whole bunch of weapons, but then any kind of stuff like if one is ejecting a shell or if something has something really cool and spinny and, all of that stuff will be driven independently by the weapon.
Awesome.
So we got a great question here. Roughly how much of the Fortnite anim tree is defined in blueprints versus defined custom native code, like the weapon firing animation? So it's not really native codes. I mean, the only thing that the code does is push these animations. They're just montage. So we just say when you press fire, play this firing animation. So this is not animation code per se. That being said, anything that's usually a one-off will be a montage. So firing animation, reloads, all the attacks, melee attacks, hit reactions, death. And because these we can have a lot of variations, they can quickly add up. So typically all the weapon animations will be contained in the weapon. So if you load the weapon, you'll load these animations. If you don't, then you don't have them in memory. Because we want to have a ton of weapons, ton of characters. We sort of split it up that way. Attacks are done the same way. What we keep in the blueprint is basically everything we need always at runtime. A lot of the locomotion, anything that's a looping animation, typically we'll keep it there. Really just all the... I guess a way of looking at it is maybe all the triggers, maybe we do montages, and then anything that's pulled from the state of the pawn, like the physics, like are you falling, are you running, this is in the blueprint, and then anything that's trigger of an event, like I fired or I died, it's a montage. You don't have to do it that way. For Fortnite it makes sense. So. In our game, we have 4 layered blends per bone total in the anim graph, yet the game has a huge performance hit on the CPU. The mesh has less than 60 bones. This is a performance optimization. Well, we would need more information for that. The layered blends are not that expensive unless you use mesh space. There's an option for mesh space. If you do use mesh space, it's going to be a lot more expensive just to do the transformation. But otherwise, it should be very fast. 60 bones is not that much. I don't know how many characters you have. It should not be a problem, but you can post in the forums more detail or on our support channels, and we can certainly look at it. Let's see. Is there an easy way to switch between animation variants if those are parts of a blend space? A locomotion blend space where the walk cycle has multiple variants. We do this quite a bit, and it's not within the same blend space, it's different blend spaces. And so just like we switch between our weapon poses, you could switch between different locomotion that way. We do it for some of our enemies to have variants. We have crowds of guys, and we have some runtime algorithm that looks at how close they are to each other, and then we try to maximize differences. So together are close will be guaranteed to play a different variation than the guys who are further apart. If you looked at our weapon pose layer, we do this, like the pistol has a blend space for the aiming, and the shotgun has a blend space for the aiming, and we just switch between these, so it's not much more different than that.
And there's a couple of ways, like there's straight up different blend spaces, but one of the things also, if like you have AI and you're limited on animation resources and you have one traversal set, what we were originally talking about with like the additive pose is another way that you can also get some variation across a whole bunch of characters with a relatively small investment, and a lot of it's just posing.
So what is the right way to make animations for an in-game customizable character? That's a very good question because there's no right answer for it. So we opened this talk by saying sort of what were our goals and our constraints, and I think that's a good way of looking at it. What are you trying to achieve, and then what do you have to achieve it, and then you pick your trade-off based on that. There was a great talk from Wolfire about procedural animation. That guy was a programmer. They had no animators, and he did everything by code. That's a great solution for it.
No, this was Overgrowth, right?
Yeah, it was
yeah.
the overgrowth talk. Fantastic. I mean, that's his approach. He had no animators, no bandwidth to do anything, so he did everything procedurally. Then you have other teams, like Ubisoft, where they can throw 100 animators and they brute force everything, and that's another valid solution. So there's no right way. It's kind of up to you to see what you're trying to achieve and the means that you have.
Yeah, and exactly like what Laurent said, know what your constraints are, know what your goals are, and know what your constraints are. And the moment that you know what your constraints are, work within those and then pick and choose the times that you break out of those.
So is there a reason you couldn't just make the origin of the weapon in the middle of the handle rather than constraining the length to the character palms? Yes, it would be better if we had a
Palm
way
bones,
to
yeah.
constrain.
Well,
it
the
would
left
be
hand was
separate.
still-
For the IK, we still need to do it on the wrist
Yeah.
because the wrist rotates, right? And so it's not easy to solve IK if you have to worry about the wrist rotation as well. So we only have to worry about these two bones. We don't have to worry about this when we do our IK.
And it's also like what we were talking about before with the left hand placement, right?
Yeah.
You're always going to have an IK offset. If everything, because that's a completely valid question. We were actually going down the path of that, but the one thing that we knew that we were going to have to do with that is always drive a left hand offset for the IK stuff, because it's still got to calculate where it's
holding the
where
weapon.
it's
Yeah.
holding and where it's going to be.
Yeah.
That was part of the thing for us, is like doing that constraint or limiting the hands as far as that distance completely eliminated the concern for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it would certainly be better to have the origin of the weapon on the handle as opposed to like the palm instead of the wrist. So we do have an offset on our weapons. But because we chose to have all the characters have the same hands exactly, it doesn't matter all that much anymore.
Yeah.
So it would be better, but it doesn't really bring anything, so it's not worth it. When you do that, you have to go through all of our animations and re-export them and fix
Yeah.
them, and the cost of doing that is just not worth it. So, nope, we're not going to do it. It's an older question. What are those joints going from the roots to the feet? That's
Yeah, what are those joints going from the root
yeah.
to the
So that's
Laurent?
IK bones that we had for the feet. That's a leftover from old times. We don't use them anymore. If you saw on
They're
our
just there to confuse you.
They're just there so we answer
it's
a
for people
question.
to ask
Got it.
questions. There were IK bones for the feet. They're not being used right now, so they could be removed. There's no reason for them anymore. So how do we handle recoil? So recoil is so there's two ways. There's the actual firing animation, and this one will have a bit of recoil that will cancel itself. So that we play from a montage. It's the aim space system that I showed. We just play an animation. That's it. Now you have the actual, when you fire a weapon and you get a little offset. That's done in code in our weapons. We just offset the aim of the player. That's it.
This is my favorite question. Can we get a Laurent sound pack in the marketplace? I want to switch out Siri for Laurent. I just want him talking to
I
me
just
all the
wanted to
time.
say, everyone
Funny.
wants you to continue saying montage.
The montage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's like butter.
We need that in UT. I'll do the announcer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
French
it's
announcer.
like
montage.
Montage.
Yeah, it's like everything. So good.
Headshot.
Headshot. Godlike.
Multi-kill.
So which bone of the hand would be the tip bone inside of a fabric node if I need to set up an IK chain of an arm for leap motion control? Right now I'm using just the hand bone, but Laurent said wrist. Wrist is our hand, so don't get confused by
Yeah.
that. That's just what we call it. It's the same thing. So the tip here would be your hand and what we call wrists.
So just when we say palm, like when we were alluding to a palm bone, that would literally be a bone or a socket that is independent of anything down chain, right? Because the IK chain still ends at the wrist, and everything down from that is still driven rotationally and translationally from that.
By that wrist.
Yeah.
And so fabric, I would only use fabric if you have more than just 2 bones. Fabric is great when you have a long chain of bones. We use just a 2-bone IK, just because we can control the elbow. Fabric, you don't have that kind of control, so only use fabric if you have more than these 2 bones. That would be my advice. If you have a massive difference in player character's palm, think the whole character versus Twigman, wouldn't it be easier to scale the weapon to match the difference? That way you can have characters to be stylized differently. Yes, it's something we've done in the past, actually, on Gears. If you remember the boom shots, the player had a scaled-down version that the boomers had. It was the same weapon, just scaled differently. For us, we don't really want to do that. I mean, we want to keep the player scale to be roughly the same. This is not a game where you're going to have a huge difference of scale between players, at least.
I mean, Fortnite's a game where there's a lot of building, and there is a limitation in there, right? Like height differences and stairs and all kinds of stuff.
And we'd like to keep the scale the same between characters, just to not close any doors. I'm thinking in terms of like interactions between players, and if the player is alone and he's only interacting with the props, you can scale them, but if he needs to interact with another character, then the scaling becomes more of a problem.
It's also a content scalability issue too, right? As you guys create more things going forward.
Yeah. So it's not something we want to do, but it would certainly work for other situations. Okay, I think that's it.
Completely valid question, just not something that we are doing.
Yeah, so we've got a couple other questions that didn't quite hit it. You guys good for now? I know we're running a little over time.
Yeah, so. I mean, we'll be happy to answer other questions on the forums or
definitely.
Anywhere else.
So if your question didn't get answered, feel free to drop it in the forum link. I will go ahead and link that right now to the chat, so we can get good to go. 1 second.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to do another stream if you guys have a more specific subject. We can always focus on just one thing and try to give you more answers.
And we promise that Chance will be sober next time.
Yes. Yeah, I'll be drinking lukewarm water. As
opposed to ice.
And also, that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, really great stuff there. If you're just now joining us, catching that last half of the stream, you missed the beginning. We did announce our winners for the Game Jam. We showed off the video of all the submissions. The winners are Bump by Kylal, Illumina by Dwanki Pengi, and King of the Pumpkins by Disco Bonsai. And everybody that participated gets a free month. Winners get 3 free months and October Game Jam t-shirts. So I'll follow up with you all about contact information and all the specifics after that. So thanks for playing. Next week we've got 2 streams with Unreal Engine and the UT stream, of course. Tuesday we're doing a November 4th support Twitch on animation deep dive with Lena and Ray Arnett. So
nice.
A little bit of crossover here, maybe some provoking thoughts.
Ray and Lena, that's like a brain trust all in itself.
Oh yeah, no, that was my first stream with you guys. Was you and Lena? So it was awesome. Then
that's the one that Laurent came crashing into.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, and then Wednesday we've got the UT stream, so it's the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then next Thursday we've got Lauren Ridge and Wes Bunn here to talk about some of the new learning resources stuff that's coming, that actually may be here by then, as well as the tutorial system and some documentation updates. So really cool stuff there too. I guess that's it. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
Yep.